I love Japanese robots. One only needs to look at my Gunpla collection, including my ginormous backlog of kits to be able to see how much I adore the genre. The same goes for my video game collection, which includes various incarnations of games such as Super Robot Wars and Another Century Episode, as well as more niche titles such as Real Robots Final Attack and Super Robot Spirits. Admittedly, they usually aren't the most polished games, but even robot video games that have earned kusuge, or crappy game status in Japan, still manage to entertain me with their own unique charm. This fascination with robot games is a big reason why I was happy when I first heard that Bandai Namco was localizing the latest entry in the Gundam Breaker series as part of a worldwide release. For anyone who likes robots, the ability to use them in battle while also being able to collect and mix robot parts to create your own mech sounds like a swell idea. Personally, I actually imported Gundam Breaker 2 and 3 from Japan. Gundam Breaker 3 especially proved to be a promising entry, a game that made it feel like the series was just a few tweaks away from becoming a truly solid franchise. Then I played New Gundam Breaker. Now the only thought in my head is, what happened? A quick look at the reviews for the game on Amazon Japan showed a 1 star out of 5 average rating from more than 200 reviewers. When Japanese fans are unhappy about a Gundam game, that says a lot. And honestly, I don't blame them. Unlike Gundam Breaker 3, which builds on the previous games in the series, New Gundam Breaker feels like a totally new game that was built from the ground up. Perhaps it's because Bandai Namco decided to part ways with the company that did the previous Gundam Breaker games for this one. Maybe it's the switch to Unreal Engine 4. Regardless of the reason for the split, the resulting game feels like a freshman effort. First off, I'd just like to say that I appreciate the fact that they added a story mode to New Gundam Breaker. Yes, it's like a harem dating sim filled with tropes and doesn't provide the most riveting prose. But at least they put effort into creating a story mode, which is something I always like to see in my games. Building your own custom robot using different parts and applying your own custom paint job also continues to be fun. I also appreciate that the devs tried to add an online PvP component to supplement the base game as a way to incorporate something new to the series. And again, it might have been better if they just concentrated on the base offline game and polished that first, especially given the switch to a new engine. See, where New Gundam Breaker really struggles is with the most important aspect of any game, which is the gameplay. Admittedly, change can be tough to adjust to, especially if you happen to be used to the previous system used in Gundam Breaker 3. I can see folks not liking a sequel because it doesn't use the same familiar mechanics that fans are familiar with, for example. Even if you've never played any game in the series and enter this title with a clean slate, however, I honestly can't see how anyone can be satisfied with the gameplay provided by New Gundam Breaker. The gameplay just has so many problems on a fundamental level that it's hard to find one thing that you could consistently latch on for enjoyment. The base gameplay for Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet, for example, is actually quite fun despite the game's lack of AAA polish. The base mechanics worked without getting in the way of my enjoyment, and I ended up recommending it to several folks. In contrast, New Gundam Breaker struggles with even basic stuff. The camera, for one, is a nightmare to deal with and can switch or get stuck for no apparent reason. This makes targeting specific enemies difficult when you're dealing with a swarm of foes. One time my mech actually got stuck inside an Apsaurus that I was supposed to destroy, and I couldn't see anything or disengage away from it. Eventually, I just watched for my mech to get destroyed so I could respawn. Lag is also an issue that frequently pops up, and that includes the offline campaign. The controls meanwhile feel clunky and not in a good Dark Souls kind of way. There seems to be a disconnect between your attacks and your movement, and I never felt completely confident with the controls. Battles also take the worst parts of an MMO and make that the raison d'etre for your missions. This typically entails doing a combination of repeating side quests, like destroying a certain amount of enemies, shooting down a certain enemy type, opening a certain number of chests, or picking up a certain number of parts. It practically makes taking down your actual rivals in the field, outside of the final mandatory kill, pretty much a waste of your time, as they detract you from fulfilling those looping side quests if you want to succeed in your mission and get a higher grade. Speaking of parts, gathering them can be a pain thanks to limited slots for picking them up. Well, that and the need to deposit them into a box in order to make sure you don't lose them. Get pounded before you can do so, and they basically go to plastic heaven. Equip them in battle, and you can still lose them if you sustain enough damage, which means you gotta find that part again if it's one you happen to like. As a result, every mission becomes an endless cycle of picking parts, putting them in a box, and repeating that cumbersome loop, all the while playing with unresponsive controls that make battling feel more like a chore instead of something that's actually fun. It's honestly a shame, as Gundam Breaker 3 made me feel like the series was headed in a great direction, and I am worried that we'll never get another game in the series localized, or perhaps even made, because this game has left such a bad impression on both newcomers and Gundam Breaker fans alike. It's honestly the worst introduction you could have had for someone who's never played the series, and it makes me wish that they just localized Gundam Breaker 3 instead. The two games feel so different that New Gundam Breaker is akin to bringing over Monster Hunter Dynamic Battle as the first Monster Hunter series to the West instead of the mainline games. It's a shame too, as Gundam Breaker 3 was definitely onto something good. This game, however, feels like something that's still in the alpha stages of production. Don't get me wrong, there were times when I felt that the game actually had some fun moments in it, including amusing moments during the story mode like this one.
もういいよ、ほっとこ。それより、今日私んち親いないんだ。一緒に朝までデカール貼ろ。
Maybe it's the inner 10-year-old in me, but I thought that was hilarious. Anyway, to their credit, the developers say that they will be patching the game to address some of the issues. I just don't know if you can patch away every problem when the game's basic design is actually what's problematic. Now, as a reviewer, I'll be the first to say that I do not relish giving a negative review. In fact, the hardest thing for me to do is criticize a game, knowing that people's livelihoods depend on the game doing well. I certainly wish every game's a good one, not just for my sake in terms of enjoying it, but for fans as well as the people who work on those games. At the same time, honesty is the currency of any review, and this game just has so many problems, it's hard to find something positive to say about it overall. I just hope it doesn't kill the series for good, as playing an action game that lets you mix and match robot parts and build your own custom mech is something I've always found enjoyable. Anyway, on to my final thoughts. As an avid robot fan and someone who enjoyed the last game in the series, I really wanted to like New Gundam Breaker. I really did. Stiff controls, however, combined with a broken part system and heavy use of tired MMO-style side quests, make this new entry in the series fall hard like a space colony on Sydney. This game made me want to go back and play its predecessor, Gundam Breaker 3 instead, which has an English subtitled version, by the way. I suggest you do the same. So, what do you think of New Gundam Breaker? As always, if you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section. This is Tabi Sobi, and thank you for watching.